Hi, it's Robin Sterling. Thanks for checking out my channel where we ask the question, what's that all about? So today I'm going to be taking you through 9 different military bases across the world and the United States. Most of them are in the United States, but I, could do 5 full episodes on what I found, but that's for another time. Today we're just going to do these 9. So I'm going to dive right in, and the first base I'm taking you to is actually down under. Central Australia. And when I say central, I mean it is in the exact, and it was done on purpose, the exact middle of the continent. So this is a US and Australian base joint, and it has been joint since 1970. And it's partially run by the CIA, the NSA, and the National Reconnaissance Office. It's also like a satellite surveillance base, and the Australian Earth Station is located there as well. One of its primary functions today is it gathers and it's like locating radio signals throughout the entire Eastern Hemisphere, and then they feed that into the United States drone program. So it's sort of like a, first line of defense, and everybody's got each other's backs and things like that. But there's also some sightings reported there. So, and I mean UFO sightings like this guy. So we'll talk more about him in a little bit. But the second place I want to take you to is in North Carolina. Now, this place, I had never heard of this. I have heard of a part of this, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But this is called the Harvey Point Defense Training Site, and it's a world-renowned spy school, which I had never heard of, and maybe you have, but I hadn't. As a point of interest, the SEAL Team 6 that did the incursion on Osama bin Laden and took him out, they constructed a complete duplicate of the bin Laden complex and were able to train very effectively there before going over and taking care of business. So that's really, that fascinated me a lot. It's run by the DOD, the Department of Defense, and it's like, what I didn't know is that they have an entirely different facility in Virginia, and they call it the sister base, and its technical name is Camp Peary. But I'm going to go a little pop culture on you. Camp Peary is where the CIA has its covert training center. Now, if you've seen the movie Silence of the Lambs, and you remember Jodie Foster's character, Agent Starling, when we first see her, she's running through like a training course, it looks like. That is supposed to be the farm, which is what they call it. That's what the CIA calls it. And actually, I guess most of the government call it that, but, I don't know. It's pretty cool. And I will tell you that the covert training they do there is world renowned, and a lot of other countries come over and do some training there. So, and next I'm going to take you with another pop culture reference to Cheyenne Mountain, which is located in Colorado Springs. So I thought, and I'm just being completely vulnerable here, I thought that Cheyenne Mountain was made up when I got really into watching Stargate SG-1, because at the end of the credits always said Cheyenne Mountain Complex. Well, so I guess it's like very real, very, very real. And I still can't, I'm so embarrassed that I didn't know this was as legitimate as it is. But anyway, this was built in like 1950s to defend against Soviet long-range missiles. But today it's actually a fully operational combat operations center for NORAD, which is the North American Aerospace Defense Command. But also housed there is the United States Strategic Command and U.S. Northern Command. And all of that is under the general command of the Space Force. I still have a time saying that, but you may have heard Northern Command mentioned this past week and a half. They were responsible, their F-22s that came out of Cheyenne Mountain were responsible for taking down those unidentified objects over Alaska and Canada. Not the one over Lake Huron in Michigan, but they were responsible for the other two. So, Now they say Cheyenne Mountain is only using 30% of their base, 5% of that being staff. Come on. There's got to be more there. They can't be wasting all that space, 70% space, without doing probably a lot more covert stuff that apparently we just don't need to know about it. But you know what? As long as they're keeping us safe, I'm kind of good with it. I'm not gonna rock that boat. So next up, we're gonna head over to FEMA, which has actually 10 regions throughout the United States. And, states are clumped into each one. You can, Google that. I'm going to be covering where the main one is in Virginia, where also located there is the Mount Weather Special Facility, which is a continuity of government facility, which falls under FEMA as well. But the whole umbrella goes under Homeland Security. So this was constructed back in 1954, and they called it Operation High Point. Back in 1954, they went over their $1 billion budget. Maybe that's why they called it High Point. But they house about seven levels in the ground, but there's so many different divisions in this that as I was reading through them, some of them felt made up. Now I'm going to let you decide what you think, but I'm going to start with the first one is the National Processing Service Center. I mean, who knows what they do, right? Satellite Teleregistration Center. That sounds like a DMV for satellites, doesn't it? Like where you got to register your satellite. I don't know. Just seemed weird. But then they have the Disaster Finance Center. That sounds legit because let's be honest, the government just is the best at spending money. Fourth one they have is Disaster Information Systems Clearinghouse. Not to be confused with Publishers Clearinghouse, which is exactly what I thought when I read it. And I don't know, anything with clearinghouse in it, right? But then they have the Disaster Personnel Operations Division. That sounds like an awfully fancy name for human resources, but I digress. The sixth one I found in there was Agency Logistics Center. I'm not even going to take a stab at that. This place underground has like between 600,000 and 700,000 square feet of living area. They have their own hospital down there. They have got cots for 2,000. They've got food. They've got a broadcast system for emergencies and whatnot. Schools, living areas. And essentially, you've got to be one of the cherry picked to, and I think you understand who that means, Senate, Congress, President, Vice President. But they, again, they have 10 regions throughout the United States, and they do not tend to put all the same level, not level, but like the same government members in one place. They do the same thing with Air Force One, like Vice President and President, they got to travel separate. So anyway, it's a lot. They have a lot there, and clearly we need them, But I'm going to just take us in another little direction here, and we're going to go for the next 4 bases with a little bit more of him. And the first one is going to be in Russia. Now, you can't go looking for this one on a map because it doesn't exist on a map. I tried, and I did the research, and they don't hide the fact that it's not on a map, which I thought was pretty interesting. It's called the Kapustin Yar. I always had trouble with that, and I've practiced it like 10 times. They have above ground, they have 3 3,500-foot runways. They've got 4 ballistic launch complexes, and then they have 14 launch pads. They have a precision tracking radar system also, but then there's also areas that have no explanation at all, which, sounds an awful lot like, secret base stuff. We have them too. Everybody does, it appears, across the world. But if you go a quarter mile down, that's where stuff gets pretty interesting because they claim to have autopsy rooms for aliens. They have recovered crafts where they try to, take the technology and get it working for them, which again, Other sites do the same thing, makes sense, but they also have a thing called alien visitors rooms. I really hope that the autopsy rooms and the visiting rooms are on different sides of the complex, because that would be awkward. Now, in researching this, it is documented by Russian UFO experts that underground in the the quarter mile down, there are two enormous hangars that come from the center hub. And apparently this is where the UFOs have come and gone as they've worked on them. Now, if you were to look at it from the surface in any spot, any location, it looks like an abandoned base. But in fact, I mean, they have all their workers are actually stationed at a town that they commandeered right next door to them, and they aren't even allowed to leave for anything. Family, nothing. They are not allowed to leave, and obviously very shut down to the public. But at this base, which was the first one that Russia did a rocket and missile test on A4, it's A4, they also know them as V2 rockets. They're German. They had 5 atmospheric nuclear tests there. And it's just to say sketchy is the understatement, but it's Russia. So anyway, let's go to friendlier lands. Let's go over to Great Britain, where for this one, if you were to drive up to it, it looks like an English manor. It's beautiful, and it's, got the brick, and it's gorgeous. And it's actually an old Royal Naval Air Force base. And the name of it is the Rudlow Manor. And it's funny because if you go down just below one level, you're in tunnels and chambers that, similar to the Russian base, are supposedly where they've housed aliens and recovered UFOs and are working again on that technology. Now, the difference is here, though, is that it was actually confirmed in 2007 when classified documents were released by the National Archives. So this has been proven and claimed, but yet the government now just claims that it's a data processing center for the Royal Navy. Now, I did my research. Again, I don't know why such heavily armed people were surrounding it and had such an adverse reaction to anybody from the public trying to even ask questions. But alas, it is what it is. We have similar places, which brings me to a place that's known by a lot of different names. You probably know it as Dreamland and Groom Lake, Paradise Ranch, Watertown, The Ranch. But what its government name goes by is the Nevada Test and Training Range. But we all know what they're talking about when they say in Southern Nevada, they know Area 51. And that's what we know it as. Well, that's what I knew it as. Now, I'm sure you've watched 1 or 2 videos on what happens if you go past or even close to the perimeter. You will see the white trucks arrive on the hills. And when I tell you they have deadly force authority, they do. I wouldn't plan a vacation there. I mean, maybe if you want to look at a very safe distance, but otherwise, just watch your step. It's pretty assy. But this location is rumored to be where in 1947, when in New Mexico, Roswell, New Mexico, there was that infamous crash. And there was wreckage from the crafts recovered and aliens. And supposedly one alien lived for a time. And they were taken to Area 51. So they did experiments and all these things, but there was a whistleblower that came forward in 1989 by the name of Bob Lazar. He was said to have worked in a division of Area 51 called S4. He claimed to work on an object called the sports model. And he was hired to reverse engineer the technology so that our military could eventually use it and adapt it and, build it for our own protection. He sought out this wonderful investigative reporter by the name of George Knapp. And at first he came out under, a guise of someone else. He was muffled and all that stuff, but he actually came out as Dennis, and that was actually his department head's name, who didn't find it very funny. But he, his story hasn't changed in 30 years, and I absolutely, without a doubt, believe everything he said. Now there's, I am sure that there is so much more going on there. I know that the U-2 bomber was created there. The technology for that was developed, and also stealth technology was developed there. But it's, we're never going to know everything. I'm convinced of that. And that's a whole nother episode, I think. I mean, I'll probably be using Bob Lazar's name down the road. But now I bring you to the final one that's a little bit tragic, very tragic. It's called the Dulce Alien Underground Base, and it is located in the mountainside of the Archuleta Mesa in New Mexico. Now, this is a quote that has always been associated with this location. Quote, "If Area 51 is the place where humans experiment on aliens, Dulce is the place where aliens experiment on us." Yeah, let that marinate for a second. Now, I'm bringing you to another whistleblower. His name is Phil Schneider. He claims to have been hired by the Pentagon to work on a Black Ops project in 1979 in the creation of an underground military base in this location. Now, they were making 4 entrances, and as they started their digging, all their equipment started to break without reason. And when they decided they were going to go down into the tunnels and figure out what was going on, the military showed up and took over everything. Green Berets showed up and actually took Phil hopped in one of those baskets that you go down in, like a mine or something. And now Phil had a sidearm because they were working in the desert, and there can be animals that can, attack you or whatnot. But so he was armed. As they descended into this tunnel, Phil Schneider claims that he came face to face with a 7-foot tall gray alien. Now, out of instinct and wanting to protect himself, he shot with his pistol at this alien, which then shot back. And then, as you can imagine, it just broke out into chaos. He claims to have been shot with a plasma weapon that they had and were using. He also lost 2 fingers on his left hand. This Green Beret that he had been with took him and threw him in the basket, got him to the surface, and essentially saved his life. Now, that Green Beret did die, and along with 65 other people, that became known as the Battle of Dulce Base. And, it's tragic because what happened at the end of that is that a horrible treaty, in my opinion, was kind of forced upon our military, and the aliens wanted to continue to do the animal mutilations that I'm sure you've all either heard about or seen out there, and then also to continue abducting humans. I mean, not that they had a choice. Their weaponry, it just exceeds everything that we could possibly even fathom at this point. So anyway, they had to, do this horrible treaty. And now I know I said I was never going to plug a book, but I did write a book that has a lot more about this in it. And I think it's timely to bring it up and say UFOs, bringing history back to see the path forward. This has everything in it. This has more about Dulce Base, Area 51, Bob Lazar, George Knapp. It's a really quick read, and I really think it's beneficial. It's available out there on everything, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, whatever. But I just think that you would get a lot out of it if you're interested in this kind of thing. It's not for everybody. I understand that. But I also know that, at the end of this research, I sat back and just kind of did, my cliche, right? What's that all about? I mean, this is not the end. There's so much more out there, but I know I have inundated you today, and this is a longer episode than normal. But I hope you can join me next week for a most likely shorter episode, but still good. And if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, share. and tell me your ideas and comments. Love to hear them. And until then, I hope you're staying happy and healthy and stay weird and take care. Bye.